Hello YouTube, it is me, Raina, and I am back. So this is going to be a new TV show that I'm talking about, but not really new. A new one for this channel is the L Word Gen Q, which is basically a sequel series to the original L Word that came out in the 2000s. And so I'm going to give my overall feelings of the show, not just this recent season, but the overall show and why I feel, personally for me, why it did not work for me as a whole and why I think it's failing its viewers as a whole. So my journey with the L Word is I watched it when I shouldn't have, when I was younger, when I was 13, when the original show came out. It was on Showtime, it was on paid programming, and they used to have this thing of like, you can get the station for free, and I used to watch it. It made me realize a lot of things about myself, and even though looking back at it now, of course, it's of its time, language change, ideas change, and of course, the show has a lot of problems, but I'm willing to kind of forgive it considering it's of its time. And yes, those criticisms still stand. And with this show, with Gen Q, it was to update it, to kind of re-examine and look at the show and bringing back some old characters. And at first, I've only really watched the first season. And I've noticed even then, kind of in the middle, that I was not really gelling with the show. And my main complaint with the show, and it's traveled from season 2 and now to the dreadful season 3. I feel like this either should have been, it is a sequel series, but it either should have either followed the older characters, like, what Sex and the City is doing right now with And Just Like That. With the older characters, they're coming back and we're continuing their story. Or we could have just wiped the slate clean, still call it the L Word Gen Q, and start out with some brand new characters. And maybe we'll get some old characters to guest star and whatever. But the show will be about the 4 main characters of Danny, Sophie, Finley, and Micah. That's the friend group, and they all have to be platonic. The main reason why I fell in love with the L Word because it was a group of queer women together who are friends. And yes, you had some of them date, Bet and Alice dated, but that was pre, history of the show. And yes, we had Bet and Tina, but everyone was platonically together and they built this great friendship. And we've seen it throughout the whole series of the show. Through the massive ups and the massive downs of the L Word. And trust me, there were some downs. To me, what really stuck to me, what really carried me throughout the whole entire show was the core friendship, and yes, the relationships and, the sensual and, sexual stuff, of course. But, I really love the friendship. And, in that time frame, in the 2000s, speaking of Sex in the City, that was kind of rare to see on TV. So, I enjoyed that. What the L Word Gen Q is really missing, and it's a great foundation, is the friendship. I just do not feel a connection of not only the newer characters, but even the older characters interacting with the newer characters. We had some of the characters, working with the older characters, interacting, but it's not really consistent. And they're kind of only paired off in relationships, and there's not enough for friendships. And what really, what I'm really talking about is the whole thing with Sophie, Danny, and Finley. I think the writers made a humongous mistake of having Sophie cheat on Danny with Finley, who is their best friend. Like I said, they're all best friends. Micah, Danny, Sophie, and Finley are friends together. And I just really hated that plot line because we spent the whole first season building up to their wedding, and you could see cold feet, mostly from Sophie and all that stuff, and you're kind of wondering, should they get married? And yes, you could have that conundrum, but what I really did not like was that storyline of them cheating, and then the whole fiasco at the beginning of season 2, and it really, in my opinion, never come to a head, and it still kind of leaked into season 3, and now Finley and Sophie are broken up, and granted, they did a whole year time jump, so we could be like, oh, well, they had a long-lasting relationship, but then it's like, well, all that was really done for nothing, and it's, even since then, they barely hang out with each other. Like, you don't see Micah with the other women, and granted, yes, he's a trans man, and I feel like even with him, he should have a community of his own. I mean, yes, I would love to see him hang out with Danny and all of them, but I feel like he should have his own community of trans and non-binary people to have his friend group and really expand that queue out and really delve into that community of, trans men or, masculine aligned people, non-binary, whatever you want to call it. And I feel like that would have been a great addition, not only for his character, but for the show. Because right now him trying to, get with Maribel and pregnant, it just came out of nowhere. It was too fast. I just don't understand. Granted, yes, it's great to see a storyline with a, disabled person and a trans man, having this story. You don't see it a lot, and I understand it, but just the way it's being told I just feel personally it's not being told well. Maybe somebody could tell me differently, since I'm not a part of those other identities. Tell me if I'm wrong. I'm willing to listen, but it's just not really compelling because they haven't really delved into his character too much. The same thing with Sophie and her being flip-floppy in this recent season of her feeling like she's not enough, and then with Danny, it's just not complete. They completely dropped her storyline, and with the OG characters, Shane is gonna Shane. Like, it's the same thing from the original show. Alice, to me, really is the only one that has moved forward, in a way. Like, she's just always gonna be Alice. And, Leisha Haley is great. She's gonna, make you laugh and whatever, but she's just Alice. And of course, the whole Bet and Tina thing, I am a fan of them. I'm not like the biggest fan of it ever, but that whole back and forth kind of did get tired a little bit, but I'm happy that they're back together. And I did hear like some people wanted Bet to be with a black woman because they never explored that side of Bet before and everything. But yeah, and there's many other things. I just feel like the Gen Q characters never had the space nor time to really delve into their characters, like with Finley and her religion dichotomy, or whatever she was going through. Like, it was just a lot. And with the older characters, they kind of felt like they were kind of stagnant or dormant for a time, and then once the show started, now they get to react and continue. It's like they were dormant when the original show ended, then they woke up when the new show came out, and it just feels like, they're just kind of there doing their thing. We know what they're doing, and it doesn't feel like anything new or inspired, which is I feel like this show should have just either been just Gen Q or the older actors. In my opinion, what I would have done, what I would personally like, is just new generation. I feel like, to me, with these characters, I know some people have criticized their acting, like, you're only as good as your script and your directors, and anybody can improve over time. And I feel like if they have given these characters the time and patience and storylines and delving into their different identities and the intersectionalities they come from, this show, yes, it'll be Generation Q. It'll be so updated. It'll be geared towards people my age or younger, and it'll give a higher viewership, and it will really showcase where the queer community is at. And I think it'll be very important. Granted, yes, the stuff they're talking about now in the show is very important, and I like that, but I feel like it's not being really dug into enough, like with some of the stuff in the original show, because it's kind of being left, kind of being like, and we said that, and we're going to move on. Like, it's not really being delved into and not really having real conversations. And I feel like a lot is to be left, and it just feels unfinished, uncooked, and kind of bland. And it's sad because, when this was first announced, I was really looking forward to it. And with this recent third season, it's just been horrendous. There were some kind of good moments, and I'm glad Tasha's back and Tina and Bet are married, but it's just not enough. I don't even know if the show is going to get a fourth season, it might be its last. The fact that the show has not garnered a very fervent fan base is saying something, because it's out there, and I feel like they should have just went with newer characters and they would have gotten that fan base. So what is your opinions? If you have anything else, leave your comment down below, and bye YouTube.